This story is about my very first Friday, the 13th experience working night security, and it's the reason I'll never take a graveyard shift again. After finishing high school, I landed a gig as a security guard for a small office complex tucked away on the edge of town. It wasn't exactly a dream job, but it was money. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and honestly, most nights were a total bore. Just me, wandering through silent hallways, checking doors that were already locked, and trying not to fall asleep in the little security booth. The building had 3 floors, but it was a ghost town after midnight. Every single employee was gone by 7 p.m., leaving the entire place to me, and, on some nights, a quiet cleaning crew that usually packed up before I even got settled in. This particular Friday, the 13th, fell in November, and the air already had that sharp, wintry bite to it. I remember it vividly because my supervisor, a gruff older guy named Frank, made a point to joke about it before he clocked out. He clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Don't let the date spook you, kid. Nothing weird ever happens on Friday the 13th. People just love scaring themselves. And you know what? I actually believed him. I thought it was all just superstitious nonsense." The first few hours of my shift were completely normal. I did my initial patrol, made some coffee, and settled into the security office to watch the bank of monitors. There were 12 cameras in total, covering all the hallways, stairwells, the main entrances, and the big, empty parking lot outside. The black and white screens showed nothing but stillness. The hum of the servers was the only sound. It was around 1:30 in the morning when the first strange thing happened. I was just staring blankly at the monitors, my eyes getting heavy, when one of the hallway cameras on the second floor flickered. It was just for a split second, a quick flash of static, and then it was back to normal. But it was enough to snap me out of my daze. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen, my heart beating just a little faster. The hallway was completely empty, a long, sterile corridor lit by the cold glow of the overhead fluorescent lights. But something felt off. It was a subtle, creeping sensation that made the hairs on my arms stand up. That's when I noticed it. At the far end of the hall, a door was ajar. Just a dark sliver of blackness against the white wall. That door led to one of the executive offices, and I knew for a fact it was supposed to be locked and secured overnight. I had checked it myself at the start of my shift. A sigh escaped my lips. Probably just one of the managers forgetting to lock up properly. Annoying, but not exactly terrifying. I grabbed my heavy mag light and my radio, clipped them to my belt, and headed out of the office to check it out. As soon as I stepped into the main lobby, a wave of cold hit me. The building felt much colder than usual, a deep, penetrating chill that had nothing to do with the November weather. The soft hum of the lights seemed louder now, echoing in the profound silence as I took the stairs to add a time up to the second floor. Walking down that empty hallway felt like walking through a tunnel. My footsteps were the only sound. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and weak in the vast emptiness. "Security. Anyone here?" Only silence answered. I reached the open door and pushed it gently. It swung inward without a sound. I stepped into the office, sweeping the beam of my flashlight across the room. It was empty. The large windows were shut tight, their blinds drawn. The desk was neat, with a computer monitor sleeping in the corner. There was absolutely no sign that anyone had been there. No papers disturbed, no chairs out of place. It was pristine. I chalked it up to a faulty lock, closed the door firmly, and heard the satisfying click as I locked it again. Problem solved. I started heading back toward the stairs, feeling a little foolish for being so on edge. I was about halfway down the hall when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. They were slow, deliberate, and heavy. The sound of work boots on linoleum. My blood ran cold. I whipped around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was nothing. Just the lawn, empty hallway stretching out behind me, the locked office door at the very end. I stood there for a full minute, listening, my ears straining for any sound. Nothing. Just the hum of the lights. I told myself it was my imagination, the building settling, my mind playing tricks on me in the dead of night. I walked a little faster, back to the security office, the feeling of being watched prickling the back of my neck. I dropped back into my chair and forced myself to look at the monitors, needing the reassurance of seeing those empty halls. And that's when I saw it. On the screen for the second-floor hallway, the one I had just left, someone was standing there. A tall, shadowy figure dressed in dark clothes. It was standing perfectly still, right in the middle of the hallway, facing directly toward the camera. My heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. Who was that? How did they get in? I frantically reached for the controls and rewound the footage. I watched myself walk down the hall, turn around, and then walk back out of frame. The hallway was empty. Then, in the space between one frame and the next, the figure just appeared. It didn't walk into the shot. It was just suddenly, there standing watching. I had to be sure. I grabbed my flashlight again, my hand shaking this time, and sprinted back up the stairs. My mind was racing. Was it an intruder? A prank? I burst into the second-floor hallway, my light scanning every corner. It was empty. The figure was gone. But as I stood there, panting, I looked up at the camera mounted on the wall near the ceiling. And that's when a new wave of fear washed over me. The camera had been moved. It was tilted slightly, pointing more toward the wall than down the length of the hallway. Someone, or something, had physically touched it. My radio, silent all night, suddenly crackled to life, the static making me jump. Then a voice came through, clear as day. My own voice. Security to base. I froze, my body rigid. The radio repeated it, a perfect mimicry of my own voice, my own cadence. Security to base. It was the standard check-in phrase I used, but I hadn't said a word. My thumb wasn't even near the button. Who is on this channel? I stammered into the radio, my voice trembling. The only reply was a burst of static, then silence. A moment later, it crackled again. Security to base. My voice. Again. But this time, it sounded distant, like it was coming from somewhere else in the building, echoing through the empty halls. That was it. I didn't wait for another call. I ran. I bolted back to the security office, slammed the door, and locked it behind me. My eyes darted to the monitors, frantically scanning each camera feed. Every hallway, every stairwell, every entrance was empty. Except for one. The camera aimed at the main entrance, looking out into the dimly lit parking lot. A man was standing there, directly outside the glass front doors, looking straight into the camera. Straight at me. Even through the grainy, black and white feed, I could see his face clearly. And a horrifying, impossible realization crashed down on me. It was my face. The same haircut. The same worried expression. The same security guard uniform. He was me. An exact copy, standing just a few feet away on the other side of the glass. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. It felt like my brain was short-circuiting. Then, the man on the screen, my doppelganger, slowly raised his hand, and he knocked on the glass door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The sound, faint but distinct, echoed through the silent building, reaching me in my little office. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was paralyzed, my eyes glued to the monitor, watching myself watch me. After what felt like an eternity, maybe 30 seconds in reality, the man outside lowered his hand. He gave one last look directly into the camera, then turned and walked calmly away, disappearing into the blackness of the parking lot beyond the reach of the lights. I sat there for hours, frozen in that chair, until the first hint of dawn appeared on the horizon. I eventually worked up the courage to go to the front door. I checked outside. There were no footprints on the pavement. No signs that anyone had been standing there at all. I quit that job the following week. I couldn't bring myself to spend another night in that building. But even now, years later, there's one detail from that night that still haunts me. A detail I only noticed later, when I was obsessively replaying the events in my mind. The man outside the door. He was wearing my uniform, the exact same one I had on that night. But his name tag was different. I could just barely make it out on the monitor when he was close to the door. Instead of my name, the tag read, in simple block letters, Friday.